Have you ever had a wake-up experience that you feel changed your life? A moment where after that, everything was different for you. I had that in my early 20s, and everything I've done since that day has been shaped by that experience. As I went on in my life from becoming an artist to an educator, a question rose up in my heart that really stirred me. And the question was, if someone didn't have a sort of mountaintop awakening, how then would they come into consciousness? I had a series of events that led up to this awakening experience. I left traditional art school, I left a corporate job, I left a lifestyle in San Francisco, I moved to the country into a trailer, ran naked in the woods, and started studying art with a bunch of powerful women. That is a catalytic agency that got me to a place of awakening. I'm not saying I'm illuminated or fully conscious, but I'm as conscious as I can be according to who I am and where I am in my life at this time. But as I look around and as I work with women, thousands and thousands of women over the past 25 years, one of the things that they say to me is, I thought I was awake, and then I started working with intentional creativity, and I realized I wasn't, and now I am. There's a pattern of that happens. And one of the reasons that happens is because in intentional creativity, when you do your own work, you naturally start to wake up, not as a concept, but because you're actually experiencing a felt, lived, physical, energetic potential in which you can come into being more of who you are in that moment, and you're facilitating it, not someone else, and not even necessarily a spiritual or psychic phenomenon. You are doing your work at many multifaceted layers of being that allows for a wake up to happen. And still, I wanted to know, is it possible to construct or facilitate experiences in which on a more regular basis, someone could come to their senses, wake up, awaken to compassion, know who they are, and go out and do what it is they're here to do, what they're here to cause and create. I'm anxious and concerned about the state of things on the planet, but I don't want to focus on constantly reacting to the challenges from a reaction place. I want to actually facilitate breakthrough before the breakdown, at least at the level of how I'm working with others, and empower others to do the same. The trainings that we offer in intentional creativity are rooted in my faith and my belief that through consistent process, practice, and rites of passage style experiences that are curated by educators who care, will create a contextual environment in which someone could arrive at a place of consciousness for themselves, and that we could together curate how consciousness happens into the future and empower ourselves and each other to begin to share this with others. 10 years ago, I founded Color of Women. That is a school that teaches women to become teachers of intentional creativity. In Color of Women, we work through 5 primary archetypes that each woman defines for herself. We provide a set of possibilities and a way of working, but she ultimately does all the work herself, because what we know in intentional creativity is that every single person is their own oracle. The only question is, do you have access to that state of intuition, and can you get there regularly enough to have that become a part of your lived wisdom and eventually shaped into your own curriculum and maybe even a body of work? And so in Color of Women, we, as of the end of 2019, will have graduated over 300 teachers worldwide who are empowered to lead others in crafting and curating images of the feminine that are both personal for themselves and transpersonal as prayers and offerings for others. In addition to Color of Woman, We also have brought out a training for people to learn to lead circles with red thread. This is also inside of the traditions of intentional creativity that women would call circles that include journaling and simple drawing, and that we would learn how to navigate creative spaces. That started in 2017. And in 2018, we brought forward a training that was designed for helping healing professionals who are already working with others in their fields who know they want to bring self-expression into their work. And that visual thinking and visual practice and what we call metacognitive drawing was the next step for them in their client work. So these 3 trainings, Color of Woman, focused in painting of the archetypes, Red Thread Guide, focused in educating others how to lead circle, both in themes and for healings and for ceremony, and then Motherboard, which is intentional creativity coaching for those who want to work with visual thinking, graphic recording, and other features of image and text with others. These 3 trainings are my body of work. And there are lots of other features of my body of work and other curriculum, but these are the places where I do my best to share what intentional creativity is with others so that they can go out and empower people in their lives, students and clients that we call beloveds. This has been my absolute joy to be in the process with so many others of developing the intentional creativity method, which is an experience-based approach to working with yourself as a practice and also educating and empowering others in the experience. It all arose out of my own experience of awakening to what happens when you create with intention, how it changes who you are almost in the moment, how it impacts your seeing, your thinking, your entire somatic experience. Creativity engages so many aspects of the human being, which is what allows it to be so quick and powerful, with an individual arriving at a state of access and also potential breakthrough, as well as a capacity to gain consistent connection with their own information, their own genius, their own internal wisdom, and to do the work needed to discover the voice which is their own, which instead of saying, hey, I'm never going to be good enough, how could I ever lead, I'm not very good painter, all the things that we say to ourselves about why we can't lead or be creative, and actually begin to say something much more powerful, which is not how can I be enough, but how can I be more of who I am in any given moment. But this isn't just a concept. It has to be experienced. We won't believe ourselves. Creativity practice offers the opportunity to actually experience this change in real time, and then it gets backed up with an actual image and becomes more believable to the framework of how the brain works, which then also impacts the field. So when we have an experiential happening that includes the mind, the senses, the full body, and the fields, and every part of you is in alignment and on board for the adventure, then we have the capacity for transformation, and in my world, for celebration. Because when there's an opportunity to celebrate, then we know that we've done good work. We can acknowledge where we've been. We can complete the body of work we've been working with to a certain moment, and then move into celebration for the future, for each other, and for our planet. So if it sparks you to be in the world of intentional creativity, I just wanted to give you an overview of the trainings and introduce you a little bit more to me, Shiloh Sophia, artist, poet, lover, and in my own way, a gatherer of cosmic community. I thought it might be interesting for you to learn a little bit more about what the method actually is. And I want to say that everything that I've learned about intentional creativity, I've learned while I'm painting and while I'm teaching. That's how the information comes through to many of us who are as awake to the capacity that we can be given any moment in space-time. That doesn't mean there isn't more. It just means what is available, I have risen to the occasion of saying yes to. And of course, there's always more within moderation. And intentional creativity is a bridge between that awakening consciousness and then living it out in your life. I wanted to share this model with you today to go into intentional creativity and how it works and why. And so here it is. I drew this out this morning. So intentional creativity method as an experience-based approach through coaching and teaching. So this that I'm sharing with you today is specific to those who are agreeing to coach and teach using intentional creativity. And while Red Thread Guide does use some intentional creativity, it's not as versed in as much technology. And this really is, a methodology is also a kind of a technology. So although I've been working at this work for 25 years, my teacher before me, Sue Hoya Sellers, my mom, Karen McLeod, my grandmother, Eden McLeod, and Sue's teacher before her, Lenore Thomas Strauss, all started in the 1930s and onward to provide a foundation of image, text, and inquiry that have led to the moment where I woke up and that I could invite others to awaken. I want to just say too that saying you're woke up doesn't mean you got all your stuff in a pile and that bad stuff doesn't still happen in your space and you've got all your things together. It just, again, means as aware and awake as you can be, you are. So in the realm of intentional creativity, we have different levels of how it can be experienced. The first one that I'd like to go through is the idea that in order for a transformation to really happen and stick, it needs to actually be an experience. So intentional creativity as an experience is an integrated method of working with others and yourself, rooted in heart, body, mind, and field. And I really mean rooted in heart, body, mind, and field, because all aspects of heart, body, mind, and field are included in the intentional creativity experience, which I'm about to go through with you now. So the first layer is this hot pink color of experience. And the next level is the concept behind the experience. The next level is where it happens in the realm of the human. The next layer is the results that could potentially happen from the experience, and then ultimately our hope and intentional creativity. So let's go through each one. The first one where we start is intention is our approach. Creativity is our access. Consciousness is the point. And coaching, teaching, or practicing is the application. So we bring intention to whatever we're doing. Creativity is the way that we do it. The reason we're doing it is so that we can wake up. And then for those who are coaching and teaching, this is the application that you actually use. So inside of that framework, what's fascinating is that in intention as our approach, that happens in the heart. In creativity as our access, that happens actually in the body because you're embodied when you're creating. In consciousness being the point, that happens in your mind and in your brain and how your brain fires. And in sharing intentional creativity, that happens in the field because it's the place where you and the other person intersect. That's where it happens. And so the heart, the body, the mind, and the field between you and others is all addressed in real time. And in each of these areas, there are multiple other things that are impacted. For example, when you're creating and you're experiencing your body in motion through painting, through dancing, through writing, through singing, through potting, through cooking, any of the creative arts, your whole self is involved. All your senses are on in that moment. And when you're aware that they're on, that adds amplification. That's why intention is so relevant there. But for change to really happen, you can't just think about it or sit on the mat about it without some kind of experienced action because you won't believe yourself. You will not have lived it. And those who can talk themselves into it may be masterful, but most of the people I know, including myself, can't talk ourselves into a transformation. You actually have to talk yourself into the moment at which you approach an opportunity to create a breakthrough. but something has to catalyze you into making this change. And it includes being embodied, being in a body, and creating emotion. And the fact that so much of you is involved in creativity is part of why it's so powerful, because the whole self is involved. You are in an integrated experience. And we all know integration is the buzzword right now. In each one of these, love is behind intention being in our approach. Play is actually behind creativity. We need more play. Awakeness is we want to be awake. And then sharing, the desire to actually share the gift with others. And there's another layer to share with you, which is that when you practice intention as an approach, the results are loving, awareness happens, and action happens. When you have creativity as your way of accessing, and you're playing, and your body is involved, you have self-expression, and you have healing, and you have imagination activated. When you are in a space of awakeness with consciousness as the point, you experience freedom, yes, liberation from preconditioned constraints, default settings, and systems and programs that aren't really designed for human beings, and especially for women. You experience freedom when you have awakeness. You experience voice, your own unique voice, compassion. You start to care about others because you're not so fixated on all of your own stuff. And then identity, being able to shape who you are, curating consciousness. The point is to be awake and to feel a sense of consciousness, that we get to be an active co-creative participant in consciousness, right? I mean, don't you want that? I want that. I want to be in a tribe of conscious, creative, playful, resourceful, passionate women. And I'm inviting those of you who are interested in that to become a part of it. Whether you participate in our online community or you come to gatherings, you work with me, you work with our teachers worldwide and soon to be coaches worldwide and our guides. However you want to play, I just want you to know that all of this actual technology is behind this concept of intentional creativity, which is so simple, which is basically to create whatever you create with intention. That love infuses everything from a quantum perspective. And then finally, those who are conscious and awake, in my experience, eventually want to share that with others. That is the often natural result of wanting to share with others. We had a child in our community recently who was practicing intentional creativity, and she was like 10 years old. As soon as she got what she got from the experience, she actually said she wanted to not only teach the other kids, she wanted to teach her mother's friends. That's how big it is when you have a breakthrough. You naturally want to share with others. So compassion is awoken through desire to share your own experience instead of other ways where you just feel bad or like you should do something or you should serve or make something of your life. None of those things really motivate you. But having your own breakthrough to the point where you're overflowing, you want to share it, then you can take educational processes with others or with us in the intentional creativity world. And over here, we're saying that if you begin to teach, practice, and coach others, you're sharing this work with others. You're bringing it out into the field, sharing it in the collective. You can have vocation. For many people, this becomes their actual vocation. You get to be a part of being educated on this really what many think of as cutting edge education that we're doing right now through intentional creativity. But also you not only get to experience the education of being trained, you get to become an educator yourself. I think joy comes from this. Joy, like pure joy. People report feeling blissful and joyful and free and liberated, sometimes for the first time in their life. Because if you felt like you weren't good enough and you were never going to make it and you weren't enough and you weren't lovable, all this stories we tell ourselves, then what happens is we don't feel joy and pleasure the way that we could. Who knew that creativity could lead to such freedom? And then ultimately connection with our greater community, our collective, the world, and also the community that is our specific tribe that works together. So all of these things happen. And when I ask myself today, what is my real mission at this point with intentional creativity? Well, it started that day that I had the wake up when my teacher Sue asked me what I cared most about in the world and invited me to put that into the clay I was working with, wedge it in, and I said to end violence against women and children in any way that I can. I had no idea how that was going to happen. And what ended up happening is the vocation of intentional creativity, a really cosmic school. But today, when I ask myself, what really is the mission? What is really my hope for the work in the world? At first, I thought I wanted it to be liberation, because I'll be honest with you, I am a rogue rebel. And from the time I was little, I was breaking out of systems and pointing out injustices. And actually, the first job I wanted, when they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a judge so I could decree justice, right? So I've always been about fairness. And so I thought, liberation, that's really the hope of all of this. And then I thought, wow, is that still responding into the system-based overculture structures that I'm fighting against? Do I want the hope of everything I'm doing to be a reaction to something that's happening? Or do I want it to be something else, something that arises naturally through our work? And that is celebration, that there's a cause for celebration. There's a cause for celebration when you become self-expressed. There's a cause for celebration when you become conscious. There's a cause for celebration when you practice education and take yourself through a rites of passage and decide who you are. There's a cause for celebration when you graduate from these programs and you end up being with other women in the world who are also excited, empowered, turned on, and want to cause a revolution in the world. There's a cause for celebration. And anyone who hangs out with me knows that celebration is something that always happens in my space. That is the space that I hold for others. And as I close, I'm thinking of an experience I had with my nephew, Sebastian, my little sister's son. And I got to be there when he did his first drawings from a practice perspective. And I can't remember even how old he was. Little, could just barely listen to an instruction. And I drew a circle and he went back and forth. And then I drew a circle and then he went back and forth. And then I held his hand and I drew the circle. And then I took my hand away and then he drew the circle. And then he started laughing. And at the moment that he started laughing, it was the most joy I'd ever seen in a child. My little sister walked in and she's like, what's happening? He became lit up. And then he made circle after circle after circle. It was like his eyes opened, his hand knew, and his eyes saw. And he started running around my studio and picking out colors, and he kept painting from that time. The joy that he had, this little tiny being, was an indicator for me of what is possible for us. We are also that child, having someone hold our hand while we draw the circle, and then being able to draw the circle for ourselves. Thank you for taking the time to listen today, and let me share with you about the awesome, beautiful gift of intentional creativity that I believe is given to us by the great beings. And we are here at this time on purpose to do what is ours, to cause and to create, uniting soul and body through authentic self-expression, culminating in celebration. Thank you.